I bought a Gerber lockdown pry with my own money from Gerber's website. Gerber.
Enemy, you're a soldier now.
Everyone's favorite knife company. Well, it's probably been a while since anyone said that, but they still make some pretty okay stuff in their Portland factory. I can still vouch for American-made Gerber to some extent, right? But there is also a much larger, flabbier wing of Gerber which makes things like this. I may well have known what I was getting in for when I ordered something that I know was overseas made, obviously quite, hastily produced Gerber. But the lockdown pry snared me with what usually does snare me about Gerber products. It's relatively pleasant, eye-catching design. Gerber still does, or Fiskars on behalf of Gerber, has a pretty good art department that makes nice looking things, causing people when they do see them in the windows at camping shops to still buy them. So is there value in doing negative reviews on foreign Gerber? Is it incredibly low-hanging fruit? Well, yes, it is, but these things are still probably selling more than most Benchmade knives sell, so I figure there might still be some value in it. Let's roll up our sleeves and try not to get too bad a case of cancer from this guy here, because this thing, it's shitful. So the lockdown pry is a compact but rather heavy stainless steel multi-tool centered on the pry bar slash nail puller. It features quite prominently on the tool. It also features a file, it features a knife, it features a pair of scissors, and it features a craft knife. Now there's a reason I'm not getting them out, because frankly, it's hard to do it fluidly on video because the deployment on these things is horrendous. The deployment and the locking and unlocking is absolutely, well, it's highly distasteful. So when you're doing a quick tool overview where you just want to slide them out, well, you got to shoot that footage separately, guys. So what have we got? Let's talk through the tool as we get through it. And well, let's start with what's easiest. On the outside is a pocket clip, and this rides pretty well in the pocket. Does a nice job of being a pocket clip. It's deep carry. So that might be the best functioning tool on the whole thing. So moving on is a pry bar slash bottle opener. This bottom lip here catching the lips of your bottles, and this general ledge here being for prying things open. So you've got a problem with a pry bar when to open a paint can, it's actually easier to use a small stubby flathead screwdriver than what should be a large surface of a pry bar. And the reason is this pry bar doesn't do very well. It's too fat. It's got a weird shape to it that's not conducive to getting under things. It's too stumpy and weird and broad and wide. A pry bar that can't pass the paint can test is not a pry bar that I care to use at all. Moving on, you've got a knife. It came out easy that time. So the knife has possibly one of the worst grinds I've ever seen on it. It's overly thick, and it is, thick and fat behind the edge and ground, like that, and all that sort of stuff. But it does cut. You can move this knife through material. However, it's got this huge ridge here for deployment, which basically shortens the usable part of the blade for doing anything larger than just cutting a thread or a sheet of paper or whatnot. The blade will be made out of some alphabet steel, 1CR1 MOV, I'm sure, or more realistically 5CR, and then it locks open with a liner lock. These blade deployment ledges here, on my knife actually is the easiest to open tool, but it certainly doesn't come, I wouldn't say easily, but out of all the other ones, it's the easiest to open. Then you've got some craft knife action going on here. So the craft knife was an interesting addition, and it's hard to really fuck up a craft knife blade because these are independently sharp. They come very sharp from whatever manufacturer. By definition, these are surgical little knives. And yep, when doing little leathery projects and things like that, the craft knife is a pretty good addition. And in fact, it's so good at cutting and it's so much more useful than the main blade. I don't know why they've gone and put a main blade on. All the main blade really does is give you realistically an extra inch of much thicker, much fatter, much less good at cutting blade. So there you go. The craft knife again locks with a liner that is incredibly stiff and often extremely hard to disengage, to the point where sometimes you need to get a fucking other tool to put the liner lock down. Push it with this Sharpie today. There we go. Because your fingers can only take so much. Right. Moving on, we've got a pair of scissors, which sort of click and chonk their way out. And these are sort of stubby-nosed mini Fiskars scissors that do an okay job of cutting extremely small things. Again, the craft knife is also good at cutting extremely small things, so its utility is questionable. How many times you'll actually use this tiny pair of scissors, well, I'm not sure if it'll be, featuring too heavily in my rotation. This one here's a slightly nicer liner lock that is less leprosy-ridden to use, but there we go. Next up is a file and a chisel. So this chisel tip is probably, apart from the pocket clip, the most functional tool out there. This is actually a meaningfully sharp chisel that is long enough away from the tool that you can actually do some chiseling with it. So chisels are, interesting enough additions on these little compact multi-tools, and I'm all for the, spread of the chisel in the multi-tool. I think it's a good idea. On either side is a file, and I hope I don't, probably no commentary is needed on why this file is ridiculous. So this lip they've got on there for deployment takes up a fair amount of the file, rendering this useless. This is a tool for the outside of the box only, for an extra number of tools. Because if you're ever filing anything with this incredibly light, non-aggressive file, you're going to be dinging this little deployment flap into everything that you're filing, which is not going to be fun. On the other side, there is like the bastard or the cross file, which is slightly more aggressive, which will perhaps file a jagged nail sticking out of something down if you really wish, and it will work a little bit better. However, then you've got it with this part of the tool again, sort of making it less useful. So they should have reversed it, but then this would have been on this side, making this more useful side less useful. So yeah. And this one here is a particularly egregious liner lock. Just like, it is so stiff. I had to actually use a screwdriver for this before, because even the Sharpie. Oh, there we go. I wasn't doing it. Oh. There we go. Easy as. And then we've already done the knife, haven't we? Yeah. So those are your tools on the Gerber Pry multi-tool, and they are about 95% shitty. None of this tool works well enough to ever warrant carrying this on a daily. The pry bar, it's way too heavy. You can get much lighter little portable pry bars. God knows every knife maker with a piece of scrap knife making material that's too small to make a knife will sell you a pry bar for $100 that will actually pry. This thing just all obtuse and wrong on the angles. It just does not work very well as a pry bar. The V for the nails is basically there in name only, because to get most nails out, you're going to need more leverage than this tiny little lip here will provide. So that is again just another utility in visual appeal only. And basically, without going on too much and kicking the horse too often, this is a shitty multi-tool that is made shittily and that has shitty tools on it that don't work well enough to ever carry its sizable weight in your pocket, in preference to a normal Leatherman style multi-tool. All right, let's just do a tiny rant about this brand. So Gerber. Gerber was bought by Fiskars about 20 years ago, and they bought them when they were like a Portland company making pretty well-regarded, stuff. It had a good name in the cutlery industry, and I guess you bought it to use that good name. And what I would have thought you would do would be invest further in what they're doing that's working and do more of it. But what seemed to happen fairly quickly was they just put the name on things like this that are made elsewhere, and that have generally, the trend is that they've all largely been of a much lower quality than the things that come out of the Gerber factory. So this is what this does to your Gerber brand that you brought. And let's use an analogy, for example. So I've got this channel, right? This channel, let's liken that to the Gerber that was, you bought in the turn of the century, right? So this channel has a decent little thing going on. It's 50,000 subs. I generally put a bit of care into most of the videos that come out. I'm usually happy with the product, and the products generally get received pretty well, right? So that's Gerber Portland, is liking it. Not the best, not the worst, but generally stuff that people who are, have their feelers out for enjoy. So what you do with this sort of stuff though, is like, say if I made a second channel, right? A second channel using my same name, face, brand, right? But this channel was massive. It's got 300,000 subscribers. Each video gets like 50,000 views, but they're much shorter, lower quality videos where I basically just run around the forest, picking up shit and eating it and laughing and rolling around on the ground, smearing it all over my body. Yeah, everyone watches that because there's an audience for that stuff, and people click on it because they're fascinated. They click on it because it's eye-grabbing. It's like, wow, I'm gonna see that. It's a good thumbnail. It's got a hook. But it's cheapening my main channel because when people want to perhaps just see a knife review, they'll search in, Cedric and Ada knife review, and it'll come up. But around it will be all these videos of just me eating shit, and so the review kind of holds less weight. And that is what this sort of stuff is doing to the Gerber that still exists and still makes pretty decent stuff, but is just drowned in shit. Am I a bit brutal? Is this low-hanging fruit? Possibly and possibly, but this is $100, which is a fair amount to spend on something that absolutely sucks. So I'm gonna go with my initial inkling that maybe someone will see this and just don't. Because if you are thinking about still getting this, well, in the words of Michael Jordan,
if you're doing it, stop it. Get some help. McDonald's wants you to give yourself a chance.
Okay, seriously, since smashing it with this steel pole across the yard, the tools all open up, except for the scissors, they're fucked. The other tools all open up a fair bit easier. So, not saying you should go and grab all of your Chinese Gerber products and smash them with posts, but results are results.